Alts One. We launched Alts One 2 years ago, 2 and a bit years ago, in March of 2022. So it's been up and running since then. The fund is currently fully allocated, and we're looking to raise a bit more capital to take advantage of opportunities that are cropping up, particularly with respect to things we're seeing in Altea, but there have also been some other things that we've seen pass our desk that we haven't been able to take advantage of. So going to just walk through the deck quickly, then take some questions. And then I've got like 15 questions people sent through as well from folks who weren't going to make it. So I'll go through those quickly too, for the benefit of everyone who wasn't able to make it. So as I said, fund was launched in March. We've got a 10-year time frame, so we're about 2 years into that, 8 years left. 20K minimum and 20% target IRR. We're hoping to do a bit better than that, but like to manage expectations a little bit, especially when so much in the macro environment is so sort of uncertain. Can read a little bit about this. One thing we're aiming for is to create a collection of assets that we think will appreciate over time, but will be as uncorrelated as possible to traditional equities, bonds, that sort of thing. Now that's got harder as the macro environment has sort of taken over. Most things are moving mostly in line with each other, even things like gold and Bitcoin that didn't used to move with equities now mostly move with equities. So it's getting a bit harder, but we're trying to keep the correlation to a minimum. So you can see right here what we've got in there at the minute. Big chunk of crypto as of end of Q1 because Bitcoin and ETH have run up. We've put a decent bit of cash behind art because we have some great connections in that space. Concert poster is, most of that is a Grateful Dead Avalon Ballroom from '66, which is considered to be sort of the grail concert poster from the era. Sports card that's a Pele rookie card. Whiskey, we've got a really nice cask of 16-year-old whiskey there, a decent portfolio of wine, a Beatles first print white album, which is serial number 000002. The first four were given to members of the Beatles and their sort of entourage. So that's a really cool piece. We've got a #1 Daredevil in the comics, a bit of tequila aging. That's about 18 months old, so halfway through that. And then a few bits and bobs beyond that. So that's where we are at the moment. We're looking to probably expand a bit more into art just because it's been performing pretty well and it's historically done very well in high interest rate environments, which we are still in, and I think we're going to be in for a while. Sports cards been taking a beating, but we're looking at other stuff in the sports area. So specifically looking at women's sports, and that could be sports cards, could be memorabilia, it could be buying a small percentage of a new franchise. So women's soccer is expanding in the U.S. Obviously, we've seen all the hype about Caitlin Clark going into the WNBA, and that's expanding outside of the U.S. as well. So there's a lot of opportunities there. I'm particularly excited about women's sports. And then longer term things, we don't do much with like micro PE and startups just because it's not really what we're aiming for, but we are keeping an eye on that as well for longer term stuff. So yeah, we mentioned these a little bit. So crypto's obviously done pretty well. Bitcoin's above 60,000 still, down from 73, but way higher than it was a year and a half ago. Art, this is one of the opportunities that we had from within Altea. So we came across a bundle of 7 works of art by a British contemporary artist from the 20th century that we got wind of. We'll be having a major exhibition in the Tate next year. And we've already had offers on 3 of those pieces. We've taken the offer on 2 of them and are declined the third one. So we've sold off 2 of the lesser 7. Let's say probably like the 5th and 6th ones. But that's been great, and the offers have revalued the portfolio, which is awesome. And tequila, so most folks will know we did a investor field trip to Tequila, Mexico in February. We've been on the sort of tequila train for a while, and our investment there has already appreciated significantly. We'd like to get more involved once we do another capital raise. So yeah, just backing up on that, there are a couple of things we're looking to rotate out of. So probably some of the whiskey I mentioned, because while it's a great asset, it's kind of like the 13 to 15% range, which isn't what we're looking for at the minute. We'll probably rebalance crypto a bit. So because it's run up so much, it's a bigger part of the portfolio than we'd like. And we'll be looking at other interesting new niches like music rights, sport finance, potentially some alternative real estate. Like we're not into multifamily in Ohio, but things like mango farms in Vietnam or whatever. Like we're into that kind of stuff. So that's me and Stefan. This is how we've done so far. So 2023 was tough for everything in the kind of like risk on alt space, but back quarter of the year and first quarter of this year, we're starting to see some of our bets paying off, which is great. In terms of perks, anyone who hits the 20K minimum will get complimentary access to Altea and all of the alts.co content. So a lot of that's paywalled. And then you'll be first in the queue for investor field trips. We promise we'll keep fees at 1% and then 20% carry. So that's what we're sticking with, even though it's expensive. That's what we've promised we're going to do, and we're going to continue to do that. So that's the sort of overview. Yep. Important notes and disclaimers. So I'm going to stop sharing that and force you to look a bit more at me, if that's okay. So I've got a bunch of questions in my sort of offline queue, but I want to give you guys who have showed up the opportunity to ask anything you've got first. We got any questions here?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I get the idea of the 10-year hold, and it's kind of what I signed up for, and it's no problem. It's fine. I'm just kind of curious that as you rotate in and out of things, what is the idea at some point of distributions or tax consequences? I mean, it's more just out of a curiosity than anything else.
Yeah. So the nature of the stuff in the portfolio is that it's pretty illiquid. So we want to make sure we leave enough time to sell off the assets as we're getting closer to the 10-year time frame. So in the interim, any profits will be reinvested back into acquiring new assets. But as we do get closer to 10-year time frame, like 8.5 years, we'll start looking at what we can do to liquidate assets in a non-fire sale sort of way. And like, it's a scary word, but if you've got a $200,000 Pele rookie card, you might not find someone on eBay who's going to give you full value for that. So we'll look at how we can do that in the best way possible. And likewise, when we're investing in like aging whiskey or tequila or whatever it is, the timeframes there are important. So we wouldn't go and invest in casks of whiskey at year 9, for example, just because they need 3 years to mature, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, I guess so. And once again, I'm kind of asking more out of curiosity than anything else. Let's just say, for example, somebody said, you know what, I just love Pele. I'll give you $1 million for it tomorrow. Of course, we'll take it.
Yeah.
And the intent is to hold on to that. Hey, we'll find other stuff for it. We're going to hold on to it. As we get closer to 10 years, we'll think about it, but it's going to be, probably 8 to 12 years is, or, just some kind of range that revolves around 10 years before anybody should expect anything back, or before I
Yeah.
should expect anything back. Okay.
Yeah. If there are folks who need to request, some of their cash out for whatever reason, someone's died or all the rest, like we'll always do our best to help folks cash out if they need to. But the intent is always to keep it in for the full 10 years. Other questions before I get to my long and distinguished list of pre-questions? Hi, Lucas. Okay, I will just go down. So we had a question, what's the target IRR? We mentioned that it's about 20 to 25%. We do have some assets in the portfolio that haven't been ticking that. I mentioned a cask of whiskey we've got, so we're looking to rotate out of that and into something that's a bit more risk on. Like with the sort of current climate, we're seeing a lot more opportunities with higher IRRs than specifically that asset, which we got into when interest rates were quite low. So we're looking to rotate out some of that stuff to bump the IRR up from kind of where it is now to the 20 to 25% mark. Okay, so we had a question about how do we mitigate the risks of crypto? And there's sort of two things with that. One is sort of risk of, platform risk. So about a year ago, we took all of our crypto out of Binance, which was the CEX we had it on, and put it into a cold storage wallet. So we don't have any risk there with respect to hacking or phishing or any of those sort of schemes. We've got a cold wallet locked up, safe and sound. So that's one approach we're taking. And the other more sort of like investment-based approach is, as I said, we've seen crypto make a big run up. We don't want to have the fund over allocated to that space. So we're looking to rebalance that. And then should Bitcoin, Ethereum dip down again, we'll look to buy the dip. But we don't want to have a massive allocation to any one asset, whether it's crypto or anything. Okay, we've got a question, what's the exit strategy for the divergent assets within the portfolio? So particularly illiquid ones. So yeah, we mentioned that a minute ago, Andrew, but some of this stuff can take significant amounts of time. So for example, works of art can take a year and a half to find the right buyer. I think finding the right buyer is important. You don't want to be selling a $500,000 piece of art for $300,000. So you don't want to have to take it to an auction, which is going to charge 20% fees, when we could find a buyer through a broker, which would charge 10% fees to the buyer rather than us. So every asset class is a bit different, and the strategy for each one has got to reflect that. And that leads nicely into another sort of like operationally question, which is, with so many divergent asset classes, like how do we authenticate and store them and insure them, which is super important, right? Like if you've got $1 million worth of art somewhere, it can't be like on my wall behind me. It's got to be somewhere safe. So all of our artwork is in free ports outside of London, insured and storage. Just paid the bill for that today, actually. Similar with wine and whiskey. Those are in free ports, insured and stored as well. Different ones because they're specialized. All of our sort of like collectibles, which includes a Pele rookie card, some 1978 Kenner Star Wars action figures, Daredevil #1, Beatles, the Beatles album. Those are all in vaults in Delaware, managed by the parent company of Collectible and PwC, respectively. So those are stored there, and they're all insured. So we we took the decision not to create our own sort of storage vault and outsource that, which does cost a little bit of money, but far better, I think, for us to focus on things that we're good at, which is identifying opportunities and buying and selling them, rather than things we're not good at, which is like building bank vaults and making sure no one breaks into them. Okay, how do we value the asset? So every quarter we do a quarterly write-up, and we're actually looking to make that more transparent, which I'll get to in a moment. But we do a quarterly write-up every quarter, and each of the assets is valued in different ways. So, for example, our action figures, we work with Hakes, which is the premier auction house for action figures. The Beatles album, we work with RR Auctions to get a feel for that. For the concert posters, we work with the leading expert in concert posters in the US. Crypto is easy, obviously. Art, we work with a couple different brokers to get their feel for valuation for each one, and then sort of triangulate that. And we run everything past a couple different folks, and we make that all pretty transparent. So everyone who is an investor in alts, let me share my screen, has access to what's effectively an Airtable. So it's not very sexy, but it does show every asset we've got and how we value it. So, for example, we've got a Bridget Riley here, which we paid $188K for, which is now worth $288K. We have Bitcoin with a dodgy image. Pele card, we've got the Grateful Dead poster, we've got Ethereum. Like everything we've bought is in here and visible for all of our investors to have a look at whenever they want to, right? So that's how we aim to be transparent. Now, what we're looking at doing is within the Altea community. Let me stop sharing that and share something else. So within our Altea community, which I think most of you know about, you can see we've created a section down here for Alts 1, which is the aim here is to be very similar to how we've dealt with Art Bundle 1, Art 2, Tequila, and basically have this is a space where you're all members and we can share any sort of news that comes up or valuation or relevant auctions or anything that we think is going to be relevant to what's going on. And it's open for comments for LPs as well. So if you're an LP in Alts 1 and you see a Pele rookie card sell, or you see a fantastic barrel of Japanese whiskey like up at auction you think we should have a look at, the idea is that you'll drop a post in here saying like, hey, check out this whiskey, it's awesome. So we're going to be doing this as a way to make it a bit more interactive rather than just the quarterly updates, which I think everyone reads them and we get feedback from them, which is nice, but I'd like to make it a bit more interesting. It's like the nature of a lot of these assets is that they are quite interesting, right? It's stuff that you want to know more about and maybe talk to friends about, maybe share with your family, whatever it is. Like I want to make it much more, number one, transparent, and number two, more fun. I'll carry on with my written down questions, but does anyone have any questions before I do?
Hey, Wyatt.
Hey, Lucas.
Hi, quick question. I recall some time ago there was a poll, maybe some discussion about creating other funds, maybe focused in certain areas of alternative assets. So I just wondered, just from a strategy point of view, what your plans are. Is to maintain Alts One is like kind of a super diversified fund because it's got like intangible and tangible assets and, nucleus investment and all kinds of things like that. So
Yeah.
It is the plan to kind of keep it that way or to create other funds that are more focused in particular asset categories?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks. So the answer is yes. So the aim is to keep this like fairly, it's quite broad, but like narrowly focused on this kind of stuff. We do have, so in addition to the SPVs we're creating within Altea, which are all for like one asset, we've got two kind of like ideas simmering away. And if we get a lot of interest in them, we'll do them. The first one is an Alts 2 that's more income producing. So it's stuff that is still like quite out there, but actually generates income. So it could be like we saw recently, Dom did a talk about his B2B digital marketing SPV, or it could be, it could be like solar finance or things like that are still a bit unusual, but will generate quarterly dividends. So that's one of them. The second thing is we're considering doing a sort of like Altea ETF. So get X number of dollars in, and every SPV we put together for Altea, this fund takes a slice of it. So you can get access to all the stuff without having to like think about each individual deal. So those are both ideas we've had that have had some positive feedback. We're not there with either of them yet, but if it turns out that the barbarians are like beating down the gate, like the walls for it, then we'll definitely make it happen. Okay. Other questions before I go to back to my little list? Okay, let's see. Yep, fee structure, we talked about that. So it's 1 in 20. So one thing that's relevant for anyone who's invested in a previous thing, which could be Alts 1 already or one of the Altea SPVs. So we're moving all of our different investment opportunities onto one platform. So we're currently on something called Vertalo for Alts 1, and we're moving everything we've got onto what is at the moment a bit new and buggy, but will ultimately be a very sort of like pleasant user experience for everyone that allows you to do your KYC once, do your self-accreditation once, and then ultimately be able to invest in any of these opportunities with like the click of a button. So that's going to be super handy. We, over the next probably month or so, we'll be transitioning everyone from the current platform, Vertalo, onto this new platform where you'll be able to see your Alts 1 investment side by side with your Art 1 bundle, your Art 2 with your Tequila 1, with whatever happens next. So it'll all be in one handy spot. Let's see. Had a question about income distribution. Nope, this isn't an income fund, but mentioned a minute ago we're looking at doing one of those. That is it. We had a bit of overlap. So have we got any more from any more here? I know I've kind of like whizzed through this quite quickly, and we'll post this for viewing later as well.
Nothing for me. That was super helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
So I've got a couple questions. What is the overall value of the current Alts 1 fund?
Current AUM is about 1.8 million.
Okay. And what does it look like from like an annual tax perspective? Is it a K1? Is it a bunch of documents? I mean, what would you expect?
Yeah, it's a K1 every year. hopefully it will be earlier next year than it was this year.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, if there aren't any more questions, y'all know where to find me, Wyatt at alts.co. Please give me a shout. And yeah, we're looking to probably firm up commits in the next week or two, and then call capital probably back half of May. Going to try to get this moved over to the new backend platform before we call capital, so we don't have to like get you onboarded one place and then move you over. But that's the general timeframes. Any questions, please give me a shout. Thanks to everyone who turned up.